Okay, we are now live and recording. Good morning. Great to see everyone. I'm sure others will join us shortly. Anybody have any comments or questions this morning before we get started? Something we talked about yesterday or your impressions of yesterday? I'm always open to feedback. I try not to be long because long is boring. Uh, I think I told you I was a pastor for 20 years. Sometimes when you're a pastor and you're preaching and you bore yourself, it's time to quit, right? So we just go home. I'm that way with teaching as well. Get up, speak up, and shut up. Those are my three rules of speaking publicly. So I'm going to try to give you the whole load of hay while we're talking. If you have questions, I do encourage you to talk. I mean, we're looking at participation grades, so please uh, chime in, ask questions, let me know you're there. If you're quiet, I might think you've died. There actually was a teacher last week doing a Zoom class and died in the middle of the class on the screen in front of his students. Can you imagine? That would be quite traumatic. So hopefully that won't happen. So same thing to our students. Try to let me know that you are alive and that you're breathing, and that'll be helpful to all of us. But I want this to be enjoyable, so I try not to make it so onerous. But great materials, and today I think what we're going to talk about today is well within my wheelhouse because I've been in religion most of my life. We're going to talk about religion and ethics and the problems with it, and how we get around that and how we have our own position. Before we get to that, on Moodle this morning, I not only posted yesterday's lecture, I responded to your bios. If you haven't done those yet, feel free to get those in and go back. I always go back and look at feedback because when we get into a subject, that's a great way to learn. You learn from each other. Iron sharpens iron. I always comment, and I'm in the discussion boards and bring up things maybe you haven't thought about. But I always go back and look. Even your bio, I responded to those that got in when I was doing it, and I'll respond to the rest of them. I always go back and look at feedback because this is how we learn. Learning is a continuous improvement project. There's not really any finish line. I used to work for BMW, and when they talked about quality, they said there is no finish line. There's no finish line to learning until the undertaker gets you. So we're always about learning and growing. And I know within your field, you're interested in learning new things to be better professionals, better able to take care of your patients. And my hat's off to those of you that already work in the field. I noticed several do already. That this is a hard task and a hard job to deal with. And so you want to learn to be the very best that you can be in your field. So learn from each other. You'll learn from your classmates. You learn from your teachers. And I hope that when you leave this class, this will be one class that you take away with you that you enjoyed and that you grew from that. But anyways, on Moodle, I set up the two discussion boards and your homework assignments for you to start working on those. Remember that we said that Sunday night is our drop dead date for the week. And you can't start on Sunday afternoon and get everything done. So just start working on pieces. Remember, set you up a folder, save what you're working on in your folder as you start and update it regularly so you don't lose things. So, you may want to write on something, save it, come back and do it. You don't have to post it till Sunday night. So basically, if you have any questions, please address those, call me, email me. I try to get to you as quickly as I can. Let me get two of our other classmates in here. Uh, okay. Um, so, okay. Want to be sure. We'll be sure at the end that I got you. Someone's just showing us an iPhone. If you could give me your name, please, so I can get you on my list here. I have Martin. You're showing with your iPhone, but I have someone that's just showing his iPhone. Okay. So everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're good. We're good to go. So, well, Brittany, I have you down. Um, Currently, Dim, Vance, Johnson, Lily, Angela, Holly, Motley, Militia, Martin, Eccles, and Blair, who I have on the attendance list. If you are here and you're not on that list, please give me your name so I'll be sure that I have you included. Okay. All right. So basically, Moodle then is our, Darnell, you don't have a Moodle account. I think it's a sign-in problem uh, with
I think
Moodle. I'm
all
sorry.
he had to do was this is Brianna speaking, but I had emailed Pam yesterday. All you have to do is email her and she'll send over the link and the instructions for how to log in because I didn't
Okay.
have one.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Darnell, did you get that? Uh,
Yeah.
good. Good. Yeah.
Thank you,
That's.
bro.
I'm sorry.
No, I was saying thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Uh, this is how we work together. This really helps the class when we share information because uh, I don't know everything, and it's helpful to get all the help that we can get together. So Darnell, work that out. Let me know. Uh, Moodle's going to be our cleanest way to for you to post things, for me to grade them, you to see feedback, and then that will get transferred over onto your grading scale. So everything for this week is up except the quiz, and I wanted to rework that. I wasn't really happy with the one that we had, so I'm going to rework that, and it will probably be open book. I'll let you know about that, but it's due on Sunday night, just like everything else. And I want to drive you back to the textbook as much as possible because it's a great textbook. Okay. Any questions before we get into our discussion this morning?
No.
Everybody's good? Okay, great. Um, as I said at the beginning, we're talking about religion and global ethics this morning. This is kind of my wheelhouse. I teach religious studies. I was a pastor for 20 years, and so I know a little bit about religion. And I wanted us to spend some time thinking about this in relation to the fact that we live in a very diverse world, and it's been my experience that religion it can be a help or it can be a detriment to getting along and understanding each other, because we kind of get in that mindset. If you look at religious theory, the closer you get to the center and core beliefs of a religion, the more alike we are. I mean, that goes if you're Hindu or Buddhist or Christian or Muslim, anything. We're much more alike the closer to the center. The further you get away from that, out into the periphery of your beliefs, the more segmented we get. And all kind of things come into play in religion as that happens. But we want to discuss basically this morning about how ethics relates to religion, and help us to understand how we can better understand our patients and the people that we deal with as medical professionals. There are a lot of historical precedents to this conversation we're having this morning that go all the way back to the Greek times, and Socrates, who was the father of Western philosophical tradition, was the first to kind of run into trouble with the religious and political authorities in Athens, because he asked them to kind of define themselves as human beings. The Greeks were the first people to really think about thinking. Do you ever think about why you think the way you do, or why we as Americans think the way we do? We have our own kind of persona, good and bad, uh, in how we operate, and we have a mindset, and we have this mindset that we get into that historically has a lot of problems, and we'll talk about that just a little bit as we go along. But the idea of thinking and freedom in America has a long history. You know, you realize that America was called the Great Experiment in the beginning because it had never been done before. Think about that. 1,700 years since we started counting, much more than that, probably almost 6,000 years from what we think was the beginning of people beginning to read and write. And that's where we mark civilization. But for all those hundreds of years, we never really acted on the idea of freedom and thinking, and freedom of religion and freedom of speech all come into play there. And so America is the first country to ever think about it. And when we put in the Declaration of Independence, you know, Thomas Jefferson that wrote most of it said that we hold these truths to be, you know, true of everybody. Now, let me ask you a question about American history. All those great freedoms of speech and thought, all those things, when he said that all men are created equal, what was Thomas Jefferson talking about? Was it really all men?
I mean, in that time, it was a lot of racism and things like that going on, right? Where it was.
Oh yeah, and you know, these are our founding documents. The two, Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, are the founding documents for America. And then you said, well, all men are created equal, but it didn't mean all men to them.
Yeah, it really did at the time.
Women had no rights.
No.
After the Revolution, the first and women's rights study in this country goes all the way back to the Revolution. Abigail Adams, John Adams' wife, the second president, sends him this letter. I call it the first Dear John letter. Dear John, when you're thinking about giving all these wonderful rights to people, men, why don't you think about the women who put on men's clothes and picked up a gun and went out and helped you fight the British? Or the women who followed the army and cooked and laundered and bandaged you up? And of course, John treated her like roadkill on the road of life and just went on and did what he wanted to. The all men created equal certainly didn't apply to slaves because they didn't have any rights. So basically, the original documents applied only to certain white men because in order to vote,
Was it white men that were privileged or?
Well, you had to have a certain amount of land and money
Right.
to be able to vote. It wasn't until Andrew Jackson in 1828 that all white men were allowed to vote. And women are agitating for freedom of speech all the way through the 1848, the Seneca Falls Conference, where women were pushing for the right to vote. Then we get to the Civil War, and in 1865, they give black men the right to vote, but not black women. But then, of course, we know what happened in the South with Jim Crow and all this stuff that tried to keep them from voting. But women didn't get the right to vote until 1921. And then that's all they got. And it was and we get to the 1960s with civil rights that these other groups kind of piggybacked on the back of civil rights to get more rights. And so women's rights, the Equal Rights Amendment, of course, which was defeated in the 70s, what came out of that. So basically, the freedom to speak, freedom of religion, all these things for all these different groups of people had to be fought out on the ground. We have this great overarching documents, but they didn't apply to Native Americans. They didn't apply to Black Americans. They didn't apply to Chinese Americans. They didn't apply to anything. And so basically, we had to fight our way to get to where we are today. Does that mean we've arrived? No, we have not. We still have issues with people still trying to get their basic rights. But freedom of religion, how did religion, these guys were very religious people and had very definite views about women and men and color and all these other things. But religion in some ways was a blessing. In other ways, it was a curse. And that's just the Christians. There were people in this country that were Jewish and Muslim and Hindu and Buddhist and all the rest in this country from the very beginning. So religion doesn't necessarily, we talk about freedom, And of course, it's going to be in the 60s. It wasn't civil rights. If it were not for the African American church, I don't know how far civil rights would have gone. People like Dr. King, the church becomes the base of that movement. But
I have an input, or do you feel like this as far as my view on it? I feel like every culture or religion has some type of turmoil within their situation. But for me, I feel like growing up in the stories that I've been told from like my great grandmother and things like that, like I feel like African American people or slaves back then, that's the only thing they did have was religion. That's what got them through.
yeah, and within
Right.
a few generations, they brought their own religious practices with them from Africa. There's a very interesting website called the Slave Trade Database. And I used to have my history students go through that and work through that database, because it has every ship, where they came from, where it landed, the number of people on the ship, men, women, and children, how many died, it's a great database to look at. But they brought their religious practices with them, but without being able to practice your religion, they disappear. Now, our religion is kind of an amalgamation of lots of practices through the history. So even in the African American church, they still have some little, pieces of their heritage that's been woven into the Christian religion. And I think that's good. A Catholic church does the same thing. To be a Catholic in Africa is very different than to be one in Rome, or to be an American Catholic, very different. So you have your own kind of ethnic take on it, so which is good. But when we look at, like I'm a Baptist, I've always been a Baptist, but they split over slavery, 1854. You have Northern Baptist and Southern Baptist. And it's amazing because the Southern Baptist finally apologized for slavery in 1995 in their role. But then when you look at the papers, when you look at stuff since then, the number of African Americans joining Southern Baptist churches has not risen 0.5%. Because, while we send millions of dollars to Africa to win folks there, we won't walk across the street to win them here. So is that changed much? I don't think so. So religion has this varied effect on all these issues that's a part of our ethnic background and our ethics in general. I was telling Tatiana earlier, I guess before we started, I pastored 2 churches. My last church, when I left it, and I left the ministry basically, over the lack of acceptance and the lack of change, and swore that I'd never join another church that was all white, and I'd never join another church where women weren't allowed into leadership and role making. And I've lived by that. I've been very happy with that. But I'm an odd white guy, from South Carolina no less, which is the most racist place on the planet. But you have to make those kind of ethical decisions to live with yourself. And I think that's vitally important to us. So religion can be detrimental. And again, how much free thinking do you think there is in religion today? We probably are thinking, I don't know your religious background, but probably within the Christian context, is free thinking allowed or not allowed in most religions? Not, you're right. Think about what the average church is like on Sunday morning. That's probably the most racially homogeneous place on the planet in the South, right? But they don't encourage free thinking. They don't encourage thinking out of the box. And a lot of that.
God way.
I'm sorry?
I said it's always God way, or what God would do.
Oh yeah, they always put that label on it. It's God's fault. This is His thinking. But you realize when you read any holy book, and then you open your mouth to say something about it, that's an interpretation. You can say, well, God said this, God said that, but unless you're just reading the scripture, that's the only time that's true.
Right.
When you say, I think or I believe, then you put your spin on it. And that's where religion kind of gets us in trouble. This idea of free thinking, our founding fathers were free thinkers. They were thinking outside the box. And I said something to you earlier about history being a weapon. Think about that. And religion is a weapon. Think about how it is welded today in our political world. We're told that our founding fathers were these wonderful Christians who, you know, when you go back and look at the list of the founding fathers, most of them were Enlightenment thinkers and were not necessarily Christian in the sense we think of Christian. Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, used the word God all through his document. But you have to go back and see, you know, when you listen to somebody talk, sometimes you have to go back and look at what dictionary they're using. And Thomas Jefferson was a deist, actually. And his idea of God would be nothing like other people. Thomas Paine, Benjamin Franklin. One of my favorite stories of Franklin was he got rich transcribing the sermons of George Whitefield and John Wesley, who were preaching in the Great Awakening. And someone asked him, they said, Mr. Franklin, do you believe in the God of George Whitefield? He said, no, but Whitefield does. And so, you know, but we use that becomes a weapon in the hands of these extremely conservative Christians today to say, oh, but that was our founding fathers believe what we believe. So we can push our views on the society and pass laws that will make people conform to, you know, alcohol is a great example. There wasn't a problem in alcohol in this country until the Prohibition of 1919 when they outlawed it. And it whacked everybody up now. You know, Baptists are teetotalers. We don't drink anything but water. But, you know, we never got over that. So, you know, the society changes and affects a lot of what we do. But these people that came out of the Enlightenment in the 1800s, where they began to think outside the box about freedom and about freedom of religion, were quite different than what we kind of portray them as. Do you think we use religion today as a weapon? I mean, Islam is the best example of that. We put people in these little pigeonholes. Oh, you're Muslim, so you're a terrorist. Or you want to destroy America. We've got lots and lots of great Muslim people living in our country. I was tutoring for a school in Colorado on a Tuesday night once, and this young man came in from Iraq and wanted some help with his writing, and I talked about that. Well, we got to talk about religion and became really good friends. And they were just breaking Ramadan, their big fast, and he said, would you come meet my family? I want you to meet my wife and kids, and you can be with us Sunday night when we break our fast and eat our meal. So I go over to his house, and we have a great time, you know, and he knows, you know, we don't have any issues. And so about 2 weeks later, he came to my room where I was tutoring, and he said, can I ask you a favor? And I said, what's that? He said, I need to go, you know, Muslims pray 5 times a day, and the last time is 7:30 in the evening. He said, I need to do my prayers, and I don't have any place to do it. Could I use your room? You can stay here. You can do your computer, whatever. So he comes in, takes off his shoes, does his evening prayers, and gets up and leaves. And I think that's kind of where we need to be with people. You accept them for who they are, and you work off of that. And that is, you know, we can label people all day long, and that's what we do in this country recently. Oh, you're this, and you're this, and you're this. If you start doing that as a nurse in a hospital situation, and everybody's got a label on them, how does that change the way you take care of your patients? Any comments?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I mean, if you put labels on people, I mean, whether it's a label of color or religion or ethnicity, or does that change the way you take care of your patients as a nurse or a healthcare provider?
It absolutely does.
I say it shouldn't, but it does.
You
shouldn't,
ain't supposed to do that.
you shouldn't, but it does sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
as a nurse, you don't want to be judgmental, or you don't want to be, like I believe I want to be like just an all around fair nurse. But then again, and God ain't done with me yet. I mean, who's to say if an enemy walk in and you take care of them the right way? Because I don't know if I could or I would. I ain't gonna lie to you about it.
Oh yeah, I mean there are you're going to be in you're going to be in situations, you're going to face situations. I mean, think about being in an emergency room situation. You don't ever know what's coming through the door,
You don't.
and you really, I mean, those people I really admire because they really have to deal with lots of stuff. But how you act or react goes back then to your ethics, I think.
Yeah.
And you have to re-examine that every day. It's not something, your positions today will be different 10 years from now, probably. I mean, and hopefully in better ways. We're constantly evolving, I think, in our thinking based upon the people we meet.
Right.
A guy said once something that I've stuck with for years. He said, 10 years from today, you're going to be the same person you are today, except for the people you meet and the books you read. Think about that. I mean, we always want to be changing and growing, right? Even in your professional life,
Right.
10 years from now, you want to be a better nurse 10 years from now than you are today, or a better professional, right? How do you get there? If you go in every day and work in the emergency room and you're dealing with trauma and all the things that go with that, how do you keep from going the other direction and become a worse professional?
You're supposed to learn things every day.
Oh yeah. And learning's an attitude, is it not? I mean, if I wake up with the attitude, this is going to be the best day. This is the only day I've got. I'm not promised that I'll make it to the end of the day. I'm not promised tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. Today, I'm going to make this the best day that I can.
Yeah, like me personally, like I think we all fight different battles. Like me personally, I hold grudges.
Mm-hmm.
So I pray about that every day because I don't want to be a nurse that feels some type of way about a enemy or a prior enemy in the past, and then their life is dependent on me, and I'm just like, or get another nurse like, can you know what I mean? I don't want to be like that. I want to be able to deliver the best care. So again, I constantly pray on that because I don't want to be that nurse. So I feel manifesting is real. So I do manifest of not having an attitude or going into life without holding grudges constantly, because that's always been one of my most downfalls.
Yeah.
So I know me though, like I'm true with myself. So I think a lot of people like that. Like I know me. So it's like, that's something that I work on and I pray on every day because I don't want to be a person. I don't think I would never harm a person. No. But if their life was on the line and I had an ultimate grudge to them, would I save them? So it's just like, that's something that I work on every day within myself. Is therapy that I take. It's a lot of things because I know me, and I think a lot of people don't know how to honestly be true with themselves. It's like,
My old grandmother used to say it so well. She said, those kind of things, hatred, bitterness, all those things, she said that just corrodes the vessel that's being held in. And I think our ethics help us to kind of guide us in those areas. Sometimes we get those from religion. Sometimes we get those from our ancestry, and go back. If I could go back and treat everyone the way my grandmother did, it'd be a lot better world around me. I'm gonna tell you a story. My grandmother was one of 5 girls, raised as a sharecropper, lived most of her life looking at the chickens walking under the floor of the house they lived in. And all she ever wanted was her own place. And she actually worked in a sewing hall and paid for it at $1.06 an hour. She bought her a house to live in. And she made quilts. And I'll never forget, as a kid, one of the neighbors' house burned. and someone was making up a pounding for them. And they came by my grandmother's house and she was going to give them a quilt. And she went in and she got one of her used quilts, and they were clean and perfectly fine, and started for the door with it, and she stopped. And she went back and she went to the drawer where she had her new quilt that she'd just finished and put untold hours on that quilt, sewing it by hand. And she took out her new quilt and gave that. And she said, I never want to give somebody something that I wouldn't want myself. And, you know, there's a lot of truth to that, a lot of great ways to guide your life when you have great people like that in your past. If you can keep them in your mind as well, how would your grandmother deal with this person, or how would your mother do it? I think that's where a lot of the ethics comes from. But so these, should there be universal principles of ethics? And how do we get beyond our religion sometimes from being divisive and appreciate diversity? I mean, we talked yesterday about the universal principles pretty much, right? How you treat everybody. But does our religion generally help that, or does it hurt that practice?
It could do both.
I think you're right. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
I feel the same way. I feel like it can do both as well, because say for instance, you're a Christian and you have to take care of someone that's, what can I say? Well, just of a different religion than you. And like some of the aspects of it, say for instance, if I was a male nurse or a male doctor, a lot of females don't want you to take care of them. And I have to ask myself before I get mad, well, why is this reason? What's the reason why, you know, she doesn't want me to take care of her? But I think a lot of it has to do with, you have to have an understanding of each resident or each patient that you're dealing with. My thing is to ask questions. You have to just ask questions and get to know your patient.
And how helpful would it be to have some religious training? Say you are a male nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Say your patient is a Muslim lady, and they have very stringent requirements in their religion about their contact with the opposite sex. You know, I mean, it would help you to know something about Islam and about their tenets, not to condemn them and say, well, I'm your nurse, you're gonna do whatever, you know, I'm in control. We go back to that thing yesterday, we talked about personal privacy and decision making. That's another area where we can work together to make sure that we accommodate our patients, right? Maybe as a male nurse, you would go and maybe you've got a partner that you share with another nurse on the floor you work together with. And maybe you let her take care of her needs and you take one of hers and trade it off. But I think it's helpful to understand these points. I mean, you know, Jewish patients, Muslim patients, even some sects of Christianity, you have to kind of be aware of your patient. And I don't think they ask those questions when they come into a hospital setting necessarily, but it would help to know those. Am I right or wrong?
Right. And also, Mr. Smith, I've been in a situation where I've also seen like a doctor, and it was just like, I like literally had tears in my eyes. Someone came in that was a transsexual, and like the doctor was so rude, was so negative, and I could not just imagine how that person, you know, felt inside. And I'm one that's big on your heart. I don't look at you as, you know, your color, your religion, anything. I look at your heart, just period. And I just felt so bad for that person, because I'm just like, you know, I can be in that situation. My child can be in that situation. and how would I feel about that? It was just sad. I just wanted to share that.
I think that's a huge area for us to even think about with gay rights. I come from a religious background where I was a pastor, and my religion tells me one thing and my science training tells me another. I'm a firm believer that those issues with being gay are genetic largely. They're not things you have control over. And it's easy for us to pass judgment on people when we haven't walked in their shoes. It always amazes me how quickly a parent's view will change about something, say that when their child becomes gay. You know, it's all right to talk about that and be against that. And I know preachers that foam at the mouth over these issues in the pulpit and run people out of the church. And that was another one of my issues when I left the ministry, that I'd never go to another church that did not accept people for who they are, regardless, period. You know, and because that's hurtful. It's very painful if you're walking in those shoes or you have a child in that situation. But as a healthcare provider, just showing a little mercy and grace and kindness makes all the difference in the world to that patient, that you accept them not based on some religious prescription, but because fellow human beings, the humaneness of what we do. I think that's important. Anyone else have something to add to that? I think it's a good discussion. And maybe we think about if our religion won't allow us to accept people, maybe we try to find another job that will be less invasive or something. Because, you know, as we've said, we want to help people, not hurt them, basically. And these issues become more and more prominent. I mean, 30 years ago, this wasn't an issue, not because these folks weren't there, but because they were so hidden from view, and they didn't get the proper care and treatment that they deserved.
I also feel that a lot of people are scared of the unknown, or say for instance, like a male nurse taking care of a transgender male that's a man that became a woman. So in that person's perspective, they are a woman and they want to be treated and respected as such. But I think some men, it's hard to do that because it's like, no, guy, you're a man. Like you turned into a woman, but you're a man.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's okay. And I see that a lot in the area that I stay in. And I think that everybody is equal though. Everybody should be treated equally, whether religion, race, skin color, gender, transgender. I think, you know, it's a lot. But I think a lot of people are more so scared of the unknown, or the, do they want me? Are they looking at me? Like, no, they want just the proper help and care.
Well, and you know, the pat answer is, well, God made you this way and you need to stay this way. You know, that's a kind of a shifting of responsibilities that helps you feel good about your position. But, you know, it's just amazing what other people suffer that we don't even think about. Trying to go to the doctor is a big deal, you know, because you don't know for them, that's unknown. You know, is this doctor going to accept me, or is he going to, or she going to brush me aside? And because of their religious backgrounds or whatever, we bring a lot of baggage to this subject, whether it's religious or personal. I think in the sense of men, we are a lot less empathetic than women are to a lot of issues, not just the sexual issues, but we, you know, this macho image that we think we're supposed to portray to the world, that doesn't fit well within what we're talking about with the level of care and taking care of people. Anybody else have a comment? I mean, these are things you're going to be facing in the trenches every day that go back to your ethics of how you're going to treat people and take care of them. And so I think it's good to spend a little time here talking about these things. One of those, again, in working with folks like that, maybe you do have a partner that you can trade off with different things to help lessen their anxieties and make it a little more, acceptable for them and give them a better experience, because you are dealing with healthcare with people that need that help. So basically, religion, civil rights, civil disobedience, all those things come within our purview sometimes of religious understanding. The book talks about this divine command theory, and I wanted to take just a moment to talk about that. When we talk about God, or are we, well, God made you this way, or God said this, what are the limitations on that? I mean, as far as a professional, pontificating God's position, we often do that, but is that a good thing, bad thing, right thing, wrong thing? How do you feel about that? I mean, is it ever right to preach to your patient about their lifestyle? Or, I mean, think about in 1980s, the HIV epidemic was very much like this COVID epidemic now, but it was unknown and unheard of and new, and basically had stricken the gay community. And how would you approach that from your ethical standpoint?
I mean, I personally wouldn't preach to nobody about their lifestyle. I mean, that's their lifestyle. Like I can't contradict a way a person lives or views things. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to be a nurse and take care of you. That's not, I don't think I would, I mean, unless it's like something as far as nutrition, like a bulimic that's throwing up or something, of course I would, want to suggest like, to eat or something like that. But I don't think I would just be like, you can't do this, or you shouldn't be gay, or you shouldn't be right. Like, I mean, who am I to judge you?
Okay, good point. Anyone else?
I agree with Tatiana. I don't feel like I wouldn't judge or preach to someone about their lifestyle, but unless it's something health related, like smoking in succession, or eating healthy, or taking antibiotics. If it's not like medical and like prolonging their life or helping their life, I wouldn't have anything to say about preaching about a lifestyle.
How about facial expressions and body language?
I'm terrible at that.
Oh yeah, I'm bad at that. Matt's been helping, but no, I can't.
Sometimes you don't have to say a word. It's just on your face, or the way that one thing that this COVID thing has brought to light with me is how difficult it is to communicate behind a mask. I mean, we're so dependent on facial expressions and body language, and it's almost like being in an online class. If you don't have video, you don't get nearly the benefit. Trying to understand someone behind a mask, but we don't realize that we're communicating in so many different ways other than just with what we say. And I think our ethics kind of pushes that as well. So we have to be very careful about how we do that. How about moral reasoning? This is something we don't think about a lot, but how you reason through these things is vitally important. It's guided sometimes by your personal ethics, by your religion, but it's important that we reason. Number one, that we understand our own views, and that we understand the views of other people. So it's really important to do that. Anybody have comments on that or anything we've mentioned?
No comments right now. Everything, Tatiana and Felicia, they kind of hit it on point.
Yeah, I mean, we do need to think about this stuff personally. You walk into a war zone every day when you go to work, right? As we said, you don't have any idea what you're going to face, who you're going to meet. It can be the worst racist in town. It can be anything you could think of. And so you do have to kind of prepare yourself mentally about how you're going to react and do all those things. The book mentions 3 reasons we should all seek to develop our moral reasoning skills. This is on page 26. First, we should be able to evaluate critically our own or other views of what is thought to be good or bad, or just or unjust, including our religious views. I think it's vitally important that we develop critical abilities, that we critically look at our thinking and our actions, right? Do you ever go home from work and while you're relaxing, think through things that happened during the day and ask yourself, did I handle that correctly? Or did I come off in a way that I don't want to come off?
I always do that. I do.
I think that's a good exercise. Anybody else?
I think you should as well. Just on the strength, like you always want to make sure that you didn't make a person feel uncomfortable in your conversation, or just make them feel like that you didn't want to treat them or take care of them. So I always try to question myself on if I handle things in a professional, in a professional way, and always question myself if I could have done more or asked more questions, if I didn't understand something.
It's a good point. I think self-inspection, self-critical, critically looking at how you do things is something we have to constantly develop. As far as your religion, as a teacher, I don't push religion in my classes. I don't push it with my students. But if we just lived our religion, I don't think you have to. One fellow said, promote your life every day. Use words if necessary. But just by living kindness and living the good parts of our religion, we ought not, necessarily have to say anything, and we shouldn't, have to do that at all. The second thing they mentioned is believers of various denominations, as well as non-believers, ought to be able to discuss moral matters together. I think we ought to be able to talk about all these things. And then the third thing, the fact that many of us live in organized secular communities, cities, states, and countries, requires that we be able to develop and rely on widely shared, reason-based views on issues of justice, fairness, and moral ideas. So the fact that we live together, we should have some foundational ability, things that we agree on. We may not, as I said, the closer you get to the center, the more alike we are, and the further away you get, the more we have room to argue. So anyone else have a comment before we move on with that?
Just in any situation, you gotta, look at yourself first, and basically like evaluate yourself first if you was in the other person's situation.
Right. Yeah, I think it's also helpful in the religious sense to think about the concept of God is there one God or many gods, or, you know, are they all the same in aspect? I mean, you have like Buddhist people, or they don't really have a God figure or a divine book. So they're kind of different. I think most of our problems will come within what they used to call the people of the book, the ones that surround, you know, come from the biblical background, Islam, Judaism, Christianity. We have more problems within those ranks because we do share so many historical similarities. You don't often find people being discriminated against for being Buddhist or Hindu as much as you do being Christian, Muslim, or Jew. And because we do share that similar history, it makes it more difficult for us to be able to operate. So basically, those are important. You know, the Christianity is probably, you know, narrowed down to what we call the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think that's a huge, huge thing.
Far as the religions too, like most people, they just believe in what they grow up off of, but you have to really study other person's religion to see where they coming from too.
Yes.
Because I took a religion course when I was at Notre Dame, and like, you know, it kind of made sense why other people believe in what they believe in, and versus what I grew up on which was Christianity. So I get, you know, how everybody believe in how they spiritual beliefs and stuff. A lot of things made sense in that class. That was a real good class to take.
Comparative religions is a great class, and I recommend you, as a part of your training, that would be a great thing to take for everyone, because we, you know, in America, we deal, if you're just going to be a nurse here and you're not going overseas to work or whatever, you're still going to face large amounts of diversity. And even within Christianity, there's tremendous diversity, and we need to understand that. The bottom line question becomes, does a person have the freedom to choose what they believe without me interfering?
I think everybody has a choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Everybody got a choice.
Yeah, it's not my job to convert you.
Right.
And I hate that. I grew up in that, where they just tear you down to get you to accept something. But I think that's the ultimate respect, that you and I can sit down and talk to each other without me trying to turn you into what I am. And that also involves me realizing that you have the complete freedom to choose, to do what you want to do, to follow the God you want to follow, or no God at all. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. And once we get that settled, a lot of things kind of fall into place, and we can be friends, and we can do whatever. So I think that's we know there's evil in the world. I think every religion in the world recognizes that fact, and how we deal with that evil and how we process it every day is a major point in our discussions. Okay, any other questions? Well, I think we have covered what I want to cover today. Read chapter 3. Chapter 2 is very interesting. I think you'll find help there. Be sure you read that carefully. Chapter 3 is a little more dense, and it talks about relative ideas and some of this ethical relativism, which I don't think would be something that would be very helpful to you. So I'm just kind of picking and choosing the things I think you can apply on the ground where you're working and living, and your skills. But do read that, and it like I say, it's a little bit dense for what we're doing.
I
So
want to be clear. So chapters 2 and 3 is what we have to read to do the assignment on the discussion. Correct.
There are page numbers on that discussion board.
Okay.
The first one is in chapter 1, and then, but I always give you the page numbers when you open that discussion board. It'll say read this and this, and use that to answer your question. one thing I want you to get used to doing, like I said yesterday, I want to help you improve your writing skills. Always quote your source. When you use, there are two things that you're required in good writing to do. If you do a direct quote, of course, you put it in quotation marks, and right after the quote, in parentheses, put the author and the year. And then at the bottom, put a full quotation. Like if you're going to quote this book, if you'll look back at something I did, I think you look at the discussion board 1. I cited the book at the bottom of that discussion. Get in the habit of doing that, giving credit to people that write things that we read, but quotations. And then if you take ideas from someone else, always give them credit for it. That's good. It keeps you out of trouble with plagiarism, because honestly, you don't know where you're going in your educational path. You may say, well, I'm just going to get my LPN, my RN, but you may go back and get a master's. And if you do, you'll be doing a lot more academic and formal writing. So you want to kind of get in that mode now and know how to do that. And I'm always here for you. You've got my number. Keep that somewhere for the future. If you get into a class where you need my help, call me. I'm always willing to help. I want to see you succeed. I want you guys to go as far as you possibly can go. And while you're on the road, just keep walking, right? And you'll know when you're done. But like I said yesterday or this morning earlier, you're going to be in school the rest of your life. So you're going to be taking classes and all these things, and you always need resources. I did encourage, I think I mentioned it yesterday, download Grammarly.com to your computer if you haven't done that, and use that to check your writing that you turn in. This is a college class, and so what you turn in ought to be pristine when it comes to grammar and punctuation and spelling, because you're a college student now. So don't, and I'm gonna tell you this honestly, as a Southerner, I really struggle not to write the way I talk. In formal writing, you want it to be formal, right? As a Southerner, we don't care how we talk usually. And the tireder I get, the worse I become. So it's always good to spell check and grammar check your stuff to be sure that you're not committing, errors. I worked for BMW for 10 years. The president of the company couldn't spell cat. And he sent all of his emails and everything through me because he was a German and he was transversing English and German, trying to survive that, but he was not a good speller. So they sent me all of his emails. I had to correct all of his emails before he sent them out so he didn't look like he was an idiot. So you always have to worry about that. You want to make sure that you've got everything correct. Any other comments before I call the roll to be sure I've got everybody? One discussion we need to have. We are supposed to make up our day off on Monday, and I can't do it on Friday. Would you guys be offended if we did it next Friday? We have to do it sometime during the term. We'll have an extra meeting. What's your thinking on that?
I mean, if you can't do it next Friday, then we won't have a choice but to do it. I mean, if you can't do it this Friday, we won't have no choice but to do it.
Now, someone mentioned we could do 2 in one day, which I can, we're only talking an hour.
The 2 in one day isn't bad to me either. I mean, that's not bad. That's it.
Okay. Is there a day next week that you guys would prefer we do 2? We'll break it. We'll break it if you want to. We'll do our 9 to 11, and then we can come back and do a 2 to 4, 2 to 3, and give us a break. It's a lot to do, both of them, I think, back to back.
Well, just as long as it's not Wednesdays. Wednesdays, I normally, my kids are at home Wednesdays.
Okay.
So as long as it's not a Wednesday.
Anybody else have another day that's a problem?
It's okay.
And it will be taped. You just don't get attendance for it. So, I'll work with you any way I can. I'm really big on participation and attendance, trying to take care of you with that. So, anybody else have comments? So why don't we, I'm sorry?
I said, no, I'm good.
Can we do next Thursday?
Are y'all okay with doing the 2 and the 1?
I'm fine with Thursday. Thursday's fine.
Okay.
Any day works for me.
Okay.
Thursday's fine for me.
And would you prefer to split it and do morning and then come back and do an afternoon? Or you want to do it? Or you want to do it back to back?
Even if we took, I don't know, how do you guys feel about like a 30 or 45-minute break in between?
Okay. So we could do like 9 to 10, 15 or whatever. We come back and do maybe 11 to 12. We won't go more than an hour. So
Yeah,
That's better. Well, hold on, because they started school, like my kids start school tomorrow. So I have one of my children are in school during the day, and then at the same time with me, so I'm gonna be on here helping her at the same time. And then my son, which needs like all my attention from that 8:30 to 10:35 slot. So it's like I'm already kind of tired. So that's what
Well, he said he's going to pre-record it. Well, he's going to re-record it. But the thing about it is, like, even if he recorded, like, you know, if someone can't tap in, the only thing about it is you won't get attendance, but it will be there for you to go back to. So I don't know, like, it's, you know.
Well, and one thing we can't.
But I gotta make up that time, so I don't wanna miss that day and not make. You get what I'm saying? Like I don't wanna miss my time being made up either.
Be on Zoom, girl. Just be on Zoom.
What about if we, you know, if you had to leave, come check in, stay as long as you can, and then check out, and I'll give you, and you'll make your attendance, and then you'll have the video. You'll have the video to go back to. Is that fair enough?
That's cool.
Okay, so let's try for Thursday, and I'll try to give us a little bit of a break, and then Tatiana, if you can come check in for a few minutes, if you can't stay the whole time, we understand that, and then you'll have the video. Is that fair? Because this is me not able to do it on Friday, so I need to make it right with you. So I'll do everything I can to help with that. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So. Doom, Vance, Johnson, Lily, Angela, Holly, Motley, Alicia, Martin, Eccles, and Blair. Anybody that don't have on the attendance roll this morning?
Did you say Brittany Blair?
Blair, I do have you. Brittany, I do have you. I'm sorry. I'm using the name that you sign in with, so I'm not being disrespectful by using first names or last names. That's just the list I was trying to make. So Brittany, I have you down, so you're good.
Did you get Maria?
Maria, no, I don't. M-A-R-I. Okay, Maria, got you. Anyone else? Oh, I enjoy seeing your kids, by the way. That makes my day. I live totally alone. I have no family. You guys are my family, so it's nice to see your kids pop in too. Anyone else? All right, I think we are good. If you have questions, please call me or email me, and I'll get to you as quickly as I can. And we will look forward to our meeting tomorrow, and we'll wrap things up. So the last two chapters tomorrow, if you want to look ahead, if you have questions, look at the Moodle, and Mr. Eccles, if we can get you set up on Moodle, that'd be great. And so then I'll have your quiz up tomorrow, and it will be due for Sunday night. And I'll give you some kind of a study guide. It's going to come directly out of the textbook. So that, number one, that's one good limiter. So you know exactly, it'll come out of the chapters from this week. It will be mainly terms, and we'll see what we can do to mitigate that. Okay. Anybody else have a comment before we go?
All right. Have a good day.
Y'all as well. Take care.
All right, goodbye,
Have a
y'all.
good one, everybody. Darnell, I'll send you that email over.
I got it.
I'll forward it to you.
I'm
You got it?
getting in now, Britt. Thanks, man.
Okay. You're welcome. All right. Bye-bye.